So Superman and Lois continues on with Inclode Bood. Yeah. No, it's In Cold Blood. No, it didn't have anything to do with the novel about those killers on death row or anything. No, it's basically Lois is having a hard time dealing with her mortality. Yeah, she's got cancer and she's scared about it. Yeah, well, it's understandable. But instead of dealing with it, she's decided to avoid it by burying herself in work. And what's that work? Well, it's snooping around the dangerous business of mobster and crime lord Bruno Mannheim. So, perhaps wants to go out in a blaze of glory or something. Who knows? Meanwhile, Superman is having nightmares about Lois being in trouble and he can't save her. And they do some scenes where he flies into Metropolis and she's standing at the foot of the Daily Planet building, and then all the buildings are crumbling and he's like, what's this all about? Fortunately, it's a dream. Otherwise, it's like, hey, why aren't you trying to stop that? But then the Daily Planet building crumbles and the big Daily Planet thing on the top of it tumbles and falls down and eventually smashes into Lois. Yeah, and he wakes up in a cold sweat and he's like, oh my God. So, of course, he's having nightmares about it because he feels helpless. And he pretty much is. There's no means by which he can save Lois from this. But she has some, she's supposed to start chemotherapy, and she just does whatever she can to get out of it. So she's twice avoiding her appointments. And, and Clark's getting upset with her and all this stuff. And at one point, she's almost about to go through with it, but then she realizes, oh, wait, a lead. So she and, Chrissy, the girl that she works with at the local paper, check in on this lead, and they get trapped inside a warehouse that's part of Mannheim's operations, and run into some guys there, and eventually call Superman in. At first they can't. They find this room where there's all this bags of blood everywhere. And they're like, oh, what's this? Bruno Mannheim's a vampire, maybe. But it's all part of their experimentations going on that did lead to the Atom Man creation they did. And but within that room, I guess it's shielded in such a way that her signal device for Superman doesn't work, doesn't reach him. And he's like, I can't find her. And then Sam Lane's mad at him. Well, you lost her. They're all panicking and stuff. And then they manage to get out, and Lois gets the drop on the crooks, and Chrissy activates a device, and she calls for Superman. And he hears it and zips over. And he deals with the thugs, but one of them has a kryptonite gun. And so, obviously, another one of the weapons that they're developing at Mannheim's, secret workshop there, or whatever, And it gets pretty serious. The blast onto Superman is doing a number on him, but then Steel shows up and saves him. And then the guy sacrifices himself and blows up the thug blows up the whole building. I suppose in an attempt to cover up what they might have discovered there. But they still managed to get some samples of the blood, and surprise, surprise, it's Superman's blood. So they're, well, how'd he get that? Whenever they did they clone it or something? And but they're utilizing it to create superpowers again. Now, this is a bit of repetitive in that it's kind of similar to the X-Kryptonite thing they were doing, where that would give people superpowers. But perhaps this one doesn't quite work that way, and the powers are a little different. Atom Man just seemed to be really strong. No, he did fly. That's right, he did. So, and it's kind of like, well, you're doing the same thing with the XK, but the government buried all that and they can't get to it, so maybe they're using Superman's blood. Who knows? Eventually Lex Luthor's going to show up. We know that's been leaked. So we'll see where it goes. The rest of it is, of course, their ongoing soap operas they got going on. And really, there's Lana Lang. She lashes out at Kyle, even though he's snooping around, wondering if she's interested in John Henry, and of course she is. But she lashes out at him over it. It's really not that big of a deal, and then Sarah is kind of talking back to her about it, and is like, what's, well, I can see why he left you, and she slaps her, So now a lot's happened there. Her predecessor was murdered and all this type of thing, and she needs security, and John Henry set it up and all that. But she was rather rotten here. She wasn't in the right at all in both cases. But meanwhile, Kyle's getting close and close with Chrissy. They almost hooked up again. But then Sarah comes in needing daddy because she's upset and all that. So, they got that going. Meanwhile, the boys, Jonathan's truck got stolen by his girlfriend's creepy dad. And so they go looking to get it back. And Natalie uses her, her steel suit. I forget what the name is for her. And they make use of that, and they manage to get the truck back. But also because she was going to give Lois this watch that her Lois had left her, and John Henry was kind of upset about it. Well, she's not your Lois and all this type of thing. But in the end, she just wanted to reach out to Lois and try to help her in this trying time. So it's this kind of thing. They do it, and they weave it well within this family that they've formed. And so ultimately, this is what Lois was doing. She's running away from and not facing the ordeal that's before her. And she, oddly enough, felt much safer chasing after vicious, murderous criminals than she did dealing with the cancer. And of course, that's been her life all along. She had been doing that, and that whole, you can assume, the typical Superman and Lois adventures that you're familiar with through the comics and what have you has already happened, and this is their life later on as they've had children and all that sort of thing. So it's still a good show. A lot of very simplistic elements, but it just works, which again is a bit of an anomaly in today, which for whatever reason, and sure, it's a lot of wokeness in other shows and whatnot, and maybe that just gets in the way, but they just can't get it together, just in basic character development and plot. But this one does. And the special effects is still, for what it is, it's still pretty good. The dream sequences they did with Superman look pretty good, especially when you easily, of course, when you compare it to the usual CW affair of today. It's still good. So there you go. Oh, in cold blood, because you know what? The bags of blood were stored in cold storage. There we go. We got it.